Everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov.
Good evening, everyone. It's a hard time, and everyone's feeling it in different ways. And I know a lot of folks are reluctant to tune into a political convention right now, or to politics in general. Believe me, I get that. But I am here tonight because I love this country with all my heart. And it pains me to see so many people hurting. I've met so many of you. I've heard your stories. And through you, I have seen this country's promise. And thanks to so many who came before me, thanks to their toil and sweat and blood, I've been able to live that promise myself. That's the story of America. All those folks who sacrificed and overcame so much in their own times because they wanted something more, something better for their kids. There's a lot of beauty in that story. There's a lot of pain in it too. A lot of struggle and injustice and work left to do. And who we choose as our president in this election will determine whether or not we honor that struggle and chip away at that injustice and keep alive the very possibility of finishing that work. I am one of a handful of people living today who have seen firsthand the immense weight and awesome power of the presidency. And let me once again tell you this: the job is hard. It requires clear-headed judgment, a mastery of complex and competing issues, a devotion to facts and history, a moral compass, and an ability to listen, and an abiding belief that each of the 330 million lives in this country has meaning and worth. A president's words have the power to move markets. They can start wars or broker peace. They can summon our better angels or awaken our worst instincts. You simply cannot fake your way through this job. As I've said before, being president doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you are. Well, a presidential election can reveal who we are too. And 4 years ago, too many people chose to believe that their votes didn't matter. Maybe they were fed up. Maybe they thought the outcome wouldn't be close. Maybe the barriers felt too steep, whatever the reason. In the end, those choices sent someone to the Oval Office who lost the national popular vote by nearly 3 million votes. In one of the states that determined the outcome, the winning margin averaged out to just 2 votes per precinct. 2 votes. And we've all been living with the consequences. When my husband left office with Joe Biden at his side, we had a record-breaking stretch of job creation. We'd secured the right to health care for 20 million people. We were respected around the world, rallying our allies to confront climate change. And our leaders had worked hand in hand with scientists to help prevent an Ebola outbreak from becoming a global pandemic. 4 years later, the state of this nation is very different. More than 150,000 people have died, and our economy is in shambles because of a virus that this president downplayed for too long. It has left millions of people jobless. Too many have lost their health care. Too many are struggling to take care of basic necessities like food and rent. Too many communities have been left in the lurch to grapple with whether and how to open our schools safely. Internationally, we've turned our back, not just on agreements forged by my husband, but on alliances championed by presidents like Reagan and Eisenhower. And here at home, as George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and a never-ending list of innocent people of color continue to be murdered, stating the simple fact that a Black life matters is still met with derision from the nation's highest office. Because whenever we look to this White House for some leadership or consolation or any semblance of steadiness, what we get instead is chaos, division, and a total and utter lack of empathy. Empathy, that's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. The ability to walk in someone else's shoes. The recognition that someone else's experience has value too. Most of us practice this without a second thought. If we see someone suffering or struggling, we don't stand in judgment, we reach out, because there, but for the grace of God, go I. It is not a hard concept to grasp. It's what we teach our children. And like so many of you, Barack and I have tried our best to instill in our girls a strong moral foundation to carry forward the values that our parents and grandparents poured into us. But right now, kids in this country are seeing what happens when we stop requiring empathy of one another. They're looking around wondering if we've been lying to them this whole time about who we are and what we truly value. They see people shouting in grocery stores, unwilling to wear a mask to keep us all safe. They see people calling the police on folks minding their own business just because of the color of their skin. They see an entitlement that says only certain people belong here, that greed is good and winning is everything, because as long as you come out on top, it doesn't matter what happens to everyone else. And they see what happens when that lack of empathy is ginned up into outright disdain. They see our leaders labeling fellow citizens enemies of the state while emboldening torch-bearing white supremacists. They watch in horror as children are torn from their families and thrown into cages, and pepper spray and rubber bullets are used on peaceful protesters for a photo op. Sadly, this is the America that is on display for the next generation. A nation that's underperforming not simply on matters of policy, but on matters of character. And that's not just disappointing, it's downright infuriating. Because I know the goodness and the grace that is out there in households and neighborhoods all across this nation. And I know that regardless of our race, age, religion, or politics, when we close out the noise and the fear and truly open our hearts, we know that what's going on in this country is just not right. This is not who we want to be. So what do we do now? What's our strategy? Over the past 4 years, a lot of people have asked me, when others are going so low, does going high still really work? My answer, going high is the only thing that works. Because when we go low, when we use those same tactics of degrading and dehumanizing others, we just become part of the ugly noise that's drowning out everything else. We degrade ourselves. We degrade the very causes for which we fight. But let's be clear. Going high does not mean putting on a smile and saying nice things when confronted by viciousness and cruelty. Going high means taking the harder path. It means scraping and clawing our way to that mountaintop. Going high means standing fierce against hatred, while remembering that we are one nation under God. And if we want to survive, we've got to find a way to live together and work together across our differences. And going high means unlocking the shackles of lies and mistrust with the only thing that can truly set us free, the cold, hard truth. So let me be as honest and clear as I possibly can. Donald Trump is the wrong president for our country. He has had more than enough time to prove that he can do the job, but he is clearly in over his head. He cannot meet this moment. He simply cannot be who we need him to be for us. It is what it is. Now, I understand that my message won't be heard by some people. We live in a nation that is deeply divided, and I am a Black woman speaking at the Democratic Convention. But enough of you know me by now. You know that I tell you exactly what I'm feeling. You know I hate politics, but you also know that I care about this nation. You know how much I care about all of our children. So if you take one thing from my words tonight, it is this. If you think things cannot possibly get worse, trust me, they can and they will if we don't make a change in this election. If we have any hope of ending this chaos, we have got to vote for Joe Biden like our lives depend on it. I know Joe. He is a profoundly decent man, guided by faith. He was a terrific vice president. He knows what it takes to rescue an economy, beat back a pandemic, and lead our country. And he listens. He will tell the truth and trust science. He will make smart plans and manage a good team. And he will govern as someone who's lived a life that the rest of us can recognize. When he was a kid, Joe's father lost his job. When he was a young senator, Joe lost his wife and his baby daughter. And when he was vice president, he lost his beloved son. So Joe knows the anguish of sitting at a table with an empty chair, which is why he gives his time so freely to grieving parents. Joe knows what it's like to struggle, which is why he gives his personal phone number to kids overcoming a stutter of their own. His life is a testament to getting back up. And he is going to channel that same grit and passion to pick us all up, to help us heal and guide us forward. Now, Joe is not perfect, and he'd be the first to tell you that. But there is no perfect candidate, no perfect president, and his ability to learn and grow, we find in that the kind of humility and maturity that so many of us yearn for right now. Because Joe Biden has served this nation his entire life without ever losing sight of who he is. But more than that, he has never lost sight of who we are, all of us. Joe Biden wants all of our kids to go to a good school, see a doctor when they're sick, live on a healthy planet. And he's got plans to make all of that happen. Joe Biden wants all of our kids, no matter what they look like, to be able to walk out the door without worrying about being harassed or arrested or killed. He wants all of our kids to be able to go to a movie or a math class without being afraid of getting shot. He wants all our kids to grow up with leaders who won't just serve themselves and their wealthy peers, but will provide a safety net for people facing hard times. And if we want a chance to pursue any of these goals, any of these most basic requirements for a functioning society, we have to vote for Joe Biden in numbers that cannot be ignored. Because right now, Folks who know they cannot win fair and square at the ballot box are doing everything they can to stop us from voting. They're closing down polling places in minority neighborhoods. They're purging voter rolls. They're sending people out to intimidate voters, and they're lying about the security of our ballots. These tactics are not new. But this is not the time to withhold our votes in protest or play games with candidates who have no chance of winning. We have got to vote like we did in 2008 and 2012. We've got to show up with the same level of passion and hope for Joe Biden. We've got to vote early, in person if we can. We've got to request our mail-in ballots right now, tonight, and send them back immediately. And follow up to make sure they're received. And then make sure our friends and families do the same. We have got to grab our comfortable shoes, put on our masks, pack a brown bag dinner, and maybe breakfast too, because we've got to be willing to stand in line all night if we have to. Look, we have already sacrificed so much this year. So many of you are already going that extra mile. Even when you're exhausted, you're mustering up unimaginable courage to put on those scrubs and give our loved ones a fighting chance. Even when you're anxious, you're delivering those packages, stocking those shelves, and doing all that essential work so that all of us can keep moving forward. Even when it all feels so overwhelming, working parents are somehow piecing it all together without childcare. Teachers are getting creative so that our kids can still learn and grow. Our young people are desperately fighting to pursue their dreams. And when the horrors of systemic racism shook our country and our consciences, millions of Americans of every age, every background rose up to march for each other, crying out for justice and progress. This is who we still are. Compassionate, resilient, decent people whose fortunes are bound up with one another. And it is well past time for our leaders to once again reflect our truth. So it is up to us to add our voices and our votes to the chorus of history, echoing heroes like John Lewis, who said, "When you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something." That is the truest form of empathy. Not just feeling, but doing. Not just for ourselves or our kids, but for everyone, for all our kids. And if we want to keep the possibility of progress alive in our time, if we want to be able to look our children in the eye after this election, we have got to reassert our place in American history. And we have got to do everything we can to elect my friend Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. Thank you all. God bless.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted which means a potential loss of funding of services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. And folks, at the top of the show, we talked about the power of voting. It matters in these DA races there, these two sisters we had there, Monique Worrell as well as Melba Pearson, but also matters in every single election. Greg Palast has been one of the folks who has been really, really focused on this for any number of years. He has a new book out. It is called How Trump Stole 2020, with comics by Ted Rall, by Greg Palast. Greg, welcome back to the show, man.
Glad to be with you, Roland.
First, I gotta get your thoughts about just this absolute madness from this crazy, deranged fool in the White House when it comes to the Postal Service.
Well, one of the problems we are running into is that before Agent Orange became president, Roland, 22% of mail-in ballots weren't counted. We already had a disaster with mail-in ballots, and it's been particularly harsh on communities of color. So, for example, you saw those lines in Georgia. Right. Do you think that African Americans like standing in the humid rain for 4 hours in Georgia, risking a virus? No. What happened in Georgia was that hundreds of thousands of people who wanted mail-in ballots didn't get them. So they had no choice but to stand in those lines. And you saw the lines. It was voters of color. So what happened in places like Georgia, what happens in several states is that they slow walk those ballots to you. 1 in 10 voters who ask for that ballot just don't get them. And again, this hits heavily in communities of color and also among young voters.
Now, when you say slow walk, same thing happened in 2016 in Wisconsin. Even after the Department of Justice under Obama approved their voter ID law, a federal judge had to call the governor, Scott Walker, in and say, what the hell? What's taking y'all so long issuing voter IDs?
Well, that's what happened. And in fact, you take a place like Wisconsin. That's the other problem, is getting your ballot counted. Did you know that if you are in Wisconsin, you've got to have a witness signature? About 8 states require that. Alabama requires that you have either 2 witness signatures. Are ready for this? You got to have someone notarize your ballot. That used to be called a poll tax, $15 for that. If you could
wait, hold. So would you, in Alabama, you have to have 2 witnesses. Then you have to have a notary notarize your ballot?
One or the other, either 2 witnesses, which is dangerous in this environment, or the other is to have your ballot notarized.
And which means you have to pay a notary for them to notarize.
Yes. And so what happens is, now remember, you say, well, Alabama, who cares? Yeah, I'll tell you about why you care. Doug Jones is fighting for his life for a U.S. Senate seat, and they're going to do everything they can to prevent the repeat of the first time he ran, in which African-American women put him over the top. They got to stop it. So they're going to say, well, we're just going to stop. There's a problem with your ballot. What's happening is that the GOP has a habit of successfully challenging about 1 in 9 ballots which are mailed in. So once you mail in your ballot, they're going to say, oh, where's the witness signature? And you talked about Wisconsin ID. You have to have a photocopy of your ID the first time you vote by mail in Wisconsin, a photocopy. And it's got to be the right ID. By the way, if you're a student, your regular student ID doesn't work. It doesn't work in Texas. Your carried concealed gun permit ID, that you can use, not your student ID. Find out what the right ID is. So it's a big process, but we can overcome it. But it requires some real work on your part. That is, everyone's watching. And the number one thing that we have to worry about, by the way, is that they're not mailing ballots to people who aren't registered. You say, well, I'm registered. Excuse me, they've removed 16.7 million people from the voter rolls. I've told you in prior discussion that included Martin Luther King's 92-year-old cousin. I was there with her when she was trying to vote for her 50th year at the same schoolhouse. And they threw her out saying, "You're not registered here anymore. Check your registration online." And our president is basically trying to prevent democracy by gumming it up further in the post office. But that's only a small part of the mail-in vote issue. So there's ways for us to deal with it, but we got to be prepared.
So here's the question. And this is what people are asking. People are responding on the YouTube channel, on the Facebook page, on Periscope. People are emailing me. And folks will keep saying, okay, Roland, what do we do? They're saying, do I prepare to go stand in line? Do I mail in my ballot? Do I vote? Doing early voting? What do I do? What do you say?
Okay, if you're young enough and healthy enough, vote, but vote early. Don't wait for election day. We don't have election days anymore. Most states, it's election month. Go in midweek when no one's there. It's safe, it's empty, it's quick. Go in and vote, but vote early. But even before you do that, check your registration, because you may be one of the 17 million people. Don't wait till it's too late and you don't get your ballot.
First, hold up. What you have to do is understand the state that you're in. Just because your cousin is in Maryland, and just because your friend is in Alabama, does not mean you're in North Carolina and the same rules apply. Understand what your state requires.
Yes. So at gregpalast.com, we're going to have as many state rules as we have, plus links to the state rules. And some of them are pretty crazy, but you're going to have to follow them, including you make sure that you sign your ballot on the inside, in the inside form, and on the outside, sign them exactly the same. If you leave off the middle initial on one signature but have it on the other, there goes your vote. Thousands of ballots were lost in New York, in the New York primary, in the New York Democratic primary, because hundreds of people had taped their ballots shut. In other words, the ballot came, it was already sealed, so people ripped open the envelope, or they used their own envelope. Use your own envelope. Tape an envelope together that was ripped. Sorry, you just lost your vote. So what you might have to do is go in to your county elections board and pick up a new ballot, or get it in the first place if it didn't arrive. By the way, ask for your ballot at least 2 months in advance. At least 2 months in advance. The head of the ACLU of Georgia, Andrea Young, she asked for her ballot 45 days in advance. She got one, but her husband's came on June 10th for a June 9 primary.
Wow.
So don't be a victim. Don't be a victim of their system. Learn the rules. And then also, if you want to avoid the post office, every state allows you to take your ballot into the county board of elections. You can always take it right in. That also saves another problem. You take it in, you get your ballot validated. What does that mean? It means that they said your signature is good. You've got like 250,000 people who lost their vote because some GOP functionary said, "I don't like that signature." And remember, this time we're going to have 50,000 Boogaloo boys in those voting stations who, when they start opening up those mail-in ballots, are going to say, "I don't like that signature. It's postage due." 100,000 people lost their ballots to postage due. So don't, follow all the rules. And by the way, if you're healthy enough and you're young enough, I want you to volunteer to be in those polling stations, not only during the day, but most important, in the evening and the next day and the next day and the next day when they're counting the ballots, so that when you get some proud boy with swastikas on his face challenging your mail-in ballot, you say, "No, you may not challenge that ballot." So we need people to challenge the challengers. Let's get prepared for this.
Precisely. And that's why, look, my parents are 73. Dad's 73, Mom be 73 in November. They worked the polls. They did just in the runoff. They are committed. But here's what I keep telling young folks. If you don't have a job, hey, these are paid positions. And so, look, we shouldn't sit here and say, "Oh, my goodness, all of these elderly citizens, we're having to shut down locations because they're afraid to work." We can replace them, have the gear, the mask, the face coverings, and everything. But this is a part of the deal here. I want to go to our panel with questions. I'm going to start first with you, Avis. Your question for Greg Palast.
Yeah, I love that you are just ringing the alarm on this. What would you say is the best thing that communities across the country need to do in order to make sure that they are able to get past the subterfuge that's been put in front of their faces to eliminate their voting rights?
Organizations should be helping people register. The other thing that we're doing is that we're in, like, for example, the key state of Wisconsin. We're getting the email addresses and phone numbers of the voters who've been removed from the voter rolls, so that organizations which are active can contact people and say, you've been removed from the voter rolls, you should re-register right now. So, why wait for someone to call you? Check yours and check all the people that you love and care about and want to vote. Check their registrations too and say, tell your cousin, you've been removed from the voter rolls. Maybe they were never there, but that's your job as well as theirs. In addition, make sure that when you fill out that ballot, don't use your own envelope. And don't make any mistakes. Don't use a red pen. Don't use lipstick or crayon or chocolate to mark the ballot. And if it says fill in the bubble, that's no joke. My sister, a lawyer, lost her vote because she didn't properly fill in a bubble. Don't put an X where it says fill in the bubble, or don't put a check mark. And don't fold it except the way that they tell you to fold it. I know it sounds crazy that your vote for president shouldn't be based on this, but it is.
Right, but these are the tactics that are used to disqualify your ballot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not just anyone. I want to tell you, according to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission, which checked in Florida, where they still have the race of the voter marked on the voter rolls, that the chance of your vote being challenged and rejected is 900% higher if you're black than if you're white. That's just the cold truth. And so you better be prepared. And part of it is to make sure that you have volunteers in those polling stations, because it's not going to be just a few hours during the day. Again, in the evening and the next day and the next day, when they're opening up those ballots, it's going to be several days of opening and reviewing each mail-in ballot, probably about 120 million of them.
Teresa.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of that. I was sitting here taking notes. All of that information is definitely worthwhile. I plan on bringing it back home to our city commissioner's office to see exactly what are they doing, in order to prepare people. So Pennsylvania actually just unveiled their plan where they are going to pay for postage for every mail-in ballot so people could go and vote. Do you believe other states should be on the same trend as in paying for the postage? And what else could we do in order to make sure, that our elections are protected?
Well, one big danger of paying for the postage, I think it should be, because as I said, over 100,000 people lost their vote for postage due. And like in Ohio, it has a space for one stamp, but you better put on two, because you need two stamps in a lot of states. I would like to see postage paid, because a lot of young people don't even know where you buy a stamp. They may not even know what a stamp is if you're under 24. And here's one of the dangers that we have to fix. If you're going to have prepaid envelopes, you have to make a special request to the post office. And I know that's pretty scary given who's running the post office. But in New York, the postmaster there, half of the ballots that were mailed in were not postmarked. So those ballots were challenged. 12,000 ballots were thrown out because there was no postmark, because pre-sorted, prepaid, pre-stamped letters are not postmarked. So you have states that say it has to be postmarked, but if it's a prepaid stamp, it's a prepaid envelope, it's not postmarked unless officials or even independent people go to your local postmaster and say, please, can you commit to run all these ballots through the sorting machines to get them postmarked? Because usually they aren't if it's prepaid. It's a big problem in states that require the postmark. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
So I got to ask you this here. So how does that work then with drop boxes?
Drop boxes are fantastic, better than mailboxes. Absolutely.
So if I get a mail-in ballot, okay, and there's a drop box, I fill it out, do everything, and I drop it in the drop box. No issue, no postmark needed.
That's correct. If you put it in the official drop box, so the states that have drop boxes absolutely use them. You can also bring your ballot. Almost every state allows you to bring in your so-called mail-in ballot into the early precinct station and just drop it off. And a lot of places, organizations which are registered, like League of Women Voters in some cases, and church groups, actually may pick up your ballots, like from older people, and take them in to the county clerk's office. Again, if you go to your county elections board and drop off your ballot there, that's absolutely the safest, and hopefully you can get your signature verified so someone can't say, no, I don't like that guy's signatures.
Wow. Any other questions, Avis or Teresa?
I do. I just one quick. You mentioned about in terms of the postmarks, that you had to, in essence, rally your specific locality to run these ballots through the machines. Although we've been hearing lately that those machines have not only, many of them across the country are not only being turned off, they're literally being disassembled. I mean, can you think of any more blatant ways in which an administration could specifically try to sabotage the main system by which its citizenry is supposed to be able to vote during a pandemic?
Well, a couple of things. By the way, I'm very concerned. I hate to bring this up, but we kind of have to. I'm concerned about violence. We saw in 2000 in Florida, and remember, I investigated that theft of the election, and it was by knocking black voters off the rolls, calling them felons. Not one was. But in addition, you had Roger Stone, remember Trump's trickster, who he just got him out of prison, right? So Roger Stone led what they called the Gucci riot, with consultants going into the Miami-Dade county offices and stopping the vote count. Now, if they didn't stop that count, there were uncounted ballots in Miami-Dade, Bush would not be president. I'm worried that it's going to be even more violent, with more Boogaloo boys and Proud Boys going into those voting offices where they're counting the ballots and raising hell because Roger Stone or even our own president says there's 1 million ballots from Bolivia in that office. And you're going to have crazy people try to use violence to shut down the count. So be prepared for that. Don't meet violence with violence, but be prepared. Stand your ground in the right way, which is, I don't care what you're doing, we're counting these ballots. Because in Miami-Dade, they stopped the count because they're afraid of these guys. We can't be afraid. We can't be afraid even when they're armed. You got to count the ballots.
All right. Teresa, any question?
No, thank you.
All right. Greg Palast, where can people get more information and where to get your book?
Okay, two things. Go to gregpalast.com for more information, both the book, How Trump Stole 2020, get it, the usual suspects, or go to gregpalast.com. And at the back of the book and on the website, I have something called the ballot condom to protect your vote. No, you don't wrap it around the ballot, but you follow the 7 steps to make sure your vote counts, because they don't want it to.
All right, then, folks. It is a pocketbook-sized book, quite easy to read. It is not a problem. And, yes, Ted Rall has these great illustrations in here as well.
Love the cartoons.
And so we certainly appreciate it. Greg, thanks for all the work that you do. I'm sure we're going to be seeing you again, because we got 77 days and we got to keep pushing, folks.
Thank you very much, Roland, for the work you do.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding of services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov.
Good evening, everybody. As you've seen by now, this isn't a normal convention. It's not a normal time. So tonight, I want to talk as plainly as I can about the stakes in this election. Because what we do these next 76 days will echo through generations to come. I'm in Philadelphia, where our Constitution was drafted and signed. It wasn't a perfect document. It allowed for the inhumanity of slavery and failed to guarantee women, and even men who didn't own property, the right to participate in the political process. But embedded in this document was a North Star that would guide future generations. A system of representative government, a democracy, through which we could better realize our highest ideals. Through civil war and bitter struggles, we improved this Constitution to include the voices of those who'd once been left out. And gradually, we made this country more just and more equal and more free. The one constitutional office elected by all of the people is the presidency. So at a minimum, we should expect a president to feel a sense of responsibility for the safety and welfare of all 330 million of us, regardless of what we look like, how we worship, who we love, how much money we have, or who we voted for. But we should also expect a president to be the custodian of this democracy. We should expect that regardless of ego, ambition, or political beliefs, the president will preserve, protect, and defend the freedoms and ideals that so many Americans marched for, went to jail for, fought for, and died for. I have sat in the Oval Office with both of the men who are running for president. I never expected that my successor would embrace my vision or continue my policies. I did hope, for the sake of our country, that Donald Trump might show some interest in taking the job seriously, that he might come to feel the weight of the office and discover some reverence for the democracy that had been placed in his care. But he never did. For close to 4 years now, he has shown no interest in putting in the work, no interest in finding common ground, no interest in using the awesome power of his office to help anyone but himself and his friends. No interest in treating the presidency as anything but one more reality show that he can use to get the attention he craves. Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't. And the consequences of that failure are severe. 170,000 Americans dead. Millions of jobs gone, while those at the top take in more than ever. Our worst impulses unleashed, our proud reputation around the world badly diminished, and our democratic institutions threatened like never before. Now, I know that in times as polarized as these, most of you have already made up your mind. But maybe you're still not sure which candidate you'll vote for, or whether you'll vote at all. Maybe you're tired of the direction we're headed, but you can't see a better path yet, or you just don't know enough about the person who wants to lead us there. So let me tell you about my friend, Joe Biden. 12 years ago, when I began my search for a vice president, I didn't know I'd end up finding a brother. Joe and I come from different places, different generations, but what I quickly came to admire about Joe Biden is his resilience, born of too much struggle, his empathy, born of too much grief. Joe is a man who learned early on to treat every person he meets with respect and dignity, living by the words his parents taught him. No one's better than you, Joe, but you're better than nobody. That empathy, that decency, the belief that everybody counts, that's who Joe is. When he talks with someone who's lost her job, Joe remembers the night his father sat him down to say that he'd lost his. When Joe listens to a parent who's trying to hold it all together right now, he does it as a single dad who took the train back to Wilmington each and every night so he could tuck his kids into bed. When he meets with military families who've lost their hero, he does it as a kindred spirit, the parent of an American soldier, somebody whose faith has endured the hardest loss there is. For 8 years, Joe was the last one in the room whenever I faced a big decision. He made me a better president, and he's got the character and the experience to make us a better country. And in my friend Kamala Harris, he's chosen an ideal partner who is more than prepared for the job. Someone who knows what it's like to overcome barriers and who's made a career fighting to help others live out their own American dream. Along with the experience needed to get things done, Joe and Kamala have concrete policies that will turn their vision of a better, fairer, stronger country into reality. They will get this pandemic under control, like Joe did when he helped me manage H1N1 and prevent an Ebola outbreak from reaching our shores. They'll expand health care to more Americans, like Joe and I did 10 years ago, when he helped craft the Affordable Care Act and nail down the votes to make it the law. They'll rescue the economy, like Joe helped me do after the Great Recession. I asked him to manage the Recovery Act, which jump-started the longest stretch of job growth in history. And he sees this moment now, not as a chance to get back to where we were, but to make long overdue changes so that our economy actually makes life a little easier for everybody. Whether it's the waitress trying to raise a kid on her own, or the shift worker always on the edge of getting laid off, or the student figuring out how to pay for next semester's classes. Joe and Kamala will restore our standing in the world. And as we've learned from this pandemic, that matters. Joe knows the world, and the world knows him. He knows that our true strength comes from setting an example that the world wants to follow. A nation that stands with democracy, not dictators. A nation that can inspire and mobilize others to overcome threats like climate change and terrorism, poverty and disease. But more than anything, what I know about Joe, what I know about Kamala, is that they actually care about every American, and that they care deeply about this democracy. They believe that in a democracy, the right to vote is sacred, and we should be making it easier for people to cast their ballots, not harder. They believe that no one, including the president, is above the law, and that no public official, including the president, should use their office to enrich themselves or their supporters. They understand that in this democracy, the commander-in-chief does not use the men and women of our military who are willing to risk everything to protect our nation as political props to deploy against peaceful protesters on our own soil. They understand that political opponents aren't un-American just because they disagree with you. A free press isn't the enemy, but the way we hold officials accountable. That our ability to work together to solve big problems like a pandemic depend on a fidelity to facts and science and logic, and not just making stuff up. None of this should be controversial. These shouldn't be Republican principles or Democratic principles. They are American principles. But at this moment, this president and those who enable him have shown they don't believe in these things. Tonight, I'm asking you to believe in Joe and Kamala's ability to lead this country out of these dark times and build it back better. But here's the thing. No single American can fix this country alone. Not even a president. Democracy was never meant to be transactional. You give me your vote, I make everything better. It requires an active and informed citizenry. So I'm also asking you to believe in your own ability, to embrace your own responsibility as citizens, to make sure that the basic tenets of our democracy endure. Because that's what's at stake right now. Our democracy. Look, I understand why a lot of Americans are down on government. The way the rules have been set up and abused in Congress make it easier for special interests to stop progress than to make progress. Believe me, I know it. I understand why a white factory worker who's seen his wages cut or his job shipped overseas might feel like the government no longer looks out for him, and why a black mom might feel like it never looked out for her at all. I understand why a new immigrant might look around this country and wonder whether there's still a place for him here. Why a young person might look at politics right now, the circus of it all, the meanness and the lies and conspiracy theories, and think, what is the point? Well, here's the point. This president and those in power, those who benefit from keeping things the way they are counting on your cynicism. They know they can't win you over with their policies. So they're hoping to make it as hard as possible for you to vote and to convince you that your vote does not matter. That is how they win. That is how they get to keep making decisions that affect your life and the lives of the people you love. That's how the economy will keep getting skewed to the wealthy and well-connected. How our health systems will let more people fall through the cracks. That's how a democracy withers, until it's no democracy at all. And we cannot let that happen. Do not let them take away your power. Do not let them take away your democracy in the face of hardship and injustice. Last month, we lost a giant of American democracy in John Lewis. And some years ago, I sat down with John and a few remaining leaders of the early civil rights movement. One of them told me he never imagined he'd walk into the White House and see a president who looked like his grandson. And then he told me that he had looked it up. And it turned out that on the very day that I was born, he was marching into a jail cell, trying to end Jim Crow segregation in the South. What we do echoes through generations. Whatever our backgrounds, we are all the children of Americans who fought the good fight. Great-grandparents working in fire traps and sweatshops without rights or representation. farmers losing their dreams to dust. Irish and Italians and Asians and Latinos told, go back where you come from. Jews and Catholics, Muslims and Sikhs made to feel suspect for the way they worshiped. Black Americans chained and whipped and hanged, spit on for trying to sit at lunch counters, beaten for trying to vote. If anyone had a right to believe that this democracy did not work and could not work, it was those Americans, our ancestors. They were on the receiving end of a democracy that had fallen short all their lives. They knew how far the daily reality of America strayed from the myth. And yet, instead of giving up, they joined together. And they said, somehow, some way, we are going to make this work. We are going to bring those words in our founding documents to life. I have seen that same spirit rising these past few years. Folks of every age and background who packed city centers and airports and rural roads so that families wouldn't be separated, so that another classroom wouldn't get shot up, so that our kids won't grow up on an uninhabitable planet. Americans of all races joining together to declare, in the face of injustice and brutality at the hands of the state, that Black lives matter. No more, but no less. So that no child in this country feels the continuing sting of racism. To the young people who led us this summer, telling us we need to be better, in so many ways, you are this country's dreams fulfilled. Earlier generations had to be persuaded that everyone has equal worth. For you, it's a given, a conviction. And what I want you to know is that for all its messiness and frustrations, your system of self-government can be harnessed to help you realize those convictions for all of us. You can give our democracy new meaning. You can take it to a better place. You're the missing ingredient. The ones who will decide whether or not America becomes the country that fully lives up to its creed. That work will continue long after this election. But any chance of success depends entirely on the outcome of this election. This administration has shown it will tear our democracy down if that's what it takes for them to win. So we have to get busy building it up by pouring all our efforts into these 76 days and by voting like never before for Joe and Kamala and candidates up and down the ticket so that we leave no doubt about what this country that we love stands for today and for all our days to come. Stay safe. God bless.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment.
As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. All right, folks, our next story. You know what? I really do love that song by Smokey Robinson. D'Angelo remade it. I love it when we're cruising together. Steve Bannon was just cruising down the ocean, and he was just having the time of his life, y'all, this morning on a $28 million yacht. Then all of a sudden, some folk with the Postal Service just rolled up and said, "Let me holler at you." Y'all, Steve Bannon, former campaign leader for Donald Trump, top advisor in the White House. This is what he looked like a few hours ago when he was in court.
Oh. Got a mask on.
Steve Bannon was arrested. Wow. This is a artistic rendering. No cameras are allowed in federal courts. This is an artistic rendering from Reuters. He was arrested on fraud charges in the border wall fundraising scam. Steve Bannon and 3 others defrauded donors by raising more than $25 million to build a wall along the southern border of the United States. According to the indictment, Bannon promised that all of the money would be used for the project. Oh, that was a lie. Instead, hundreds of thousands of dollars were used for personal gain. Do y'all know who I haven't heard from today? I ain't heard from Steve Bannon's good buddy, Raynard Jackson. So you remember Raynard was talking all that trash? Well, Raynard went on Steve Bannon's radio show. So Steve Bannon is the latest Trumper, Reese, to be indicted. And Trump was asked about this today. Oh, he was sad to hear it. But somebody said, but hold up, but you picked all these people. Right. Isn't it amazing? Then he tried to say, oh, Obama was corrupt. No, please just refresh my memory. I don't recall Obama people doing perp walks.
No. And this is actually the second Trump campaign co-chair or manager to get arrested. Paul Manafort has already been convicted of crimes that he committed. And so the Trump orbit is nothing more than a criminal enterprise. I think by the time, in the next couple of years, we're going to see some RICO charges on all these people, and they're all going to go down. The way that you get the white folks is you got to get them with the financial crimes, okay? They get the black folks with the stop and frisk and all the other stuff, but you got to get the white folks with the financial crimes. And so it's much harder to weasel out of these things because they have all the documentation. And so, these are the chickens coming home to roost, and even Bill Barr cannot come to Steve Bannon's rescue. And the good thing is that this likely will not be dispositioned in a way that Donald Trump can pardon him or commute his sentence like he did with Roger Stone, and he will be going to jail behind this.
So here, the folks at the Midas Touch, they don't wait long. They already dropped they Steve Bannon ad. And you know I'm obliged to play it.
Papadopoulos was convicted of lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russians.
He was the coffee boy.
Don't remember much about it.
Former Trump campaign advisor Rick Gates pleaded guilty.
Paul Manafort convicted on 8 criminal counts.
George Nader just arrested today on child pornography charges.
Associates of the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani.
Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman.
I don't even know who they are.
Felix Sater. He is in the news because of his efforts to build a hotel in Moscow with Donald Trump.
If he were sitting in the room right now, I really wouldn't know what he looked like.
President Trump's longtime personal lawyer, Michael Cohen.
Michael Flynn admitting he lied to the FBI.
Roger Stone has now been found guilty on 7 counts.
Breaking news of Trump's ex-political advisor, Steve Bannon, being arrested in connection with a crowdfunding scheme called We Build the Wall.
Midas Touch is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Hey, Reese, I guess they might have a new slogan in the White House. I don't know.
Well, I love that they had the only people who haven't been indicted yet. We do know from news this week that there had been several criminal referrals from the Senate intelligence investigation that were sent to, I believe, Barr or one of Trump's corrupt attorney generals that were not acted upon. And so there are some people that are still in the crosshairs of criminal liability.
But before I go to you, Greg, you know the Lincoln Project, they had to have something to say too.
Of course.
And I am obliged to play it. I guess if Trump wants some inside knowledge of the federal prison system, he can ask all of his former workers.
Well, I suspect, Roland, he had some inside knowledge even of this, because remember, this is the Southern District of New York. That's where Audrey Strauss is her first big case that she's announced since Toady Barr replaced Jeffrey Berman up there. I think Trump probably knew about this. And you messy for going on Twitter and putting all them boat songs on there, brother. My contribution to your list was the Hughes Corporation.
Hashtag songs for Steve Bannon.
Songs for Steve Bannon. My contribution was the Hughes Corporation, Rock the Boat.
Don't rock the boat. Don't rock the boat, baby. Rock the boat. Don't tip the boat over.
You know what I'm saying? But there's a line in there. Up till now, we've sailed through every storm. But understand that Steve Bannon considers himself an intellectual. I used to see Steve Bannon over at Capitol Hill Books right down the street from the Capitol. It's not there anymore. But this shows you that appeals to intellect, appeals to trying to think through. I mean, Steve Bannon trying to create a globalist society, all this stuff. At the end of the day, this is about naked power. When he couldn't serve Donald Trump anymore, they threw him overboard. And if you don't think that Barr didn't tell Trump before this went down that the Southern District was getting ready to drop their hammer, because remember, Trump said something the other day about, oh, Bannon, I don't know, man. Yeah, because it's your turn. I'm just waiting on Steve Bannon's book and Steve Bannon to finally name all the names. But even that's not going to be enough, because between the QAnon people and the White Nationalist Party, they don't care about criminality. This is all about power, brother.
Yep.
So they will throw Steve Bannon. Oh, he's finding out now.
So here, before you speak, Erica, this is when the Orange One was asked about his former homie, Steve Bannon, at the White House today.
Mr. President, it's Roger Stone, it's Michael Flynn, it's Rick Gates, Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen. What's it say about your judgment that these are the kind of people?
Well, I have no idea.
And the culture of lawlessness around.
Well, no, there was great lawlessness in the Obama administration. They spied on our campaign illegally.
And if you look at all of the things and all of the scandals they had tremendous lawlessness. But I know nothing about, I was not involved in the project. I have no idea who was, but I can tell you I didn't know the people, the three people that were talked about were people that I did not know. I don't believe I ever met them. I don't think that should be a privately financed wall. I don't think it's too complex. It's too big. And we're now up to 300 miles almost in another week and a half. We'll be up to 300 miles of wall at the highest level. They were even having construction problems. I was reading, the little I know about it, I got from you. I was reading where they were having construction problems with the wall that they had a small area just to show people that they could build a wall, and they were having a lot of problems where it was toppling over and other things. And I didn't like it because I didn't want to be associated with that. We built a very powerful wall. It was a wall that is virtually impossible to get through. It's very, very tough. It's very strong, and it's everything the Border Patrol wants.
Reese, his ass line. Excuse me, Eric, his ass line.
Yeah, he's the father of lies and the son of a Klansman, right? When you think about Steve Bannon, I immediately think about, and I always go back to this moment in CPAC in February 2017, where he sat on stage and said very boldly, and it was printed across many, many publications, and people talked about it, well, except for Black people, very casually, that the plan for this particular regime was to deconstruct the administrative state. And now Steve Bannon, the day after Senator Kamala Harris made it very clear that she knows a predator when she sees one and has no issue with prosecuting transnational criminal organizations that very next day that he was arrested. I think that's just very poetic in and of itself. And so when we kind of look at, the grifting nature, right, this emoluments president, and that things that come out of his loin pretty much do the same thing. Now, interestingly enough, from what I understand, the yacht that he was on was of a Chinese billionaire. So when you think about all of the money that
a Chinese billionaire reportedly tied to Chinese Secret Service. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
But see, this is why you have to be tuned in to Roland Martin Unfiltered. And why all of this matters, everyone, is because while this regime, and I'm going to use the term that I love when Dr. Carr talks about toadies, William Barr, and all of those different sycophants and people that fall up under that regime, real dear leader squadron, is that when you think about what they've been doing is telling Americans, listen, $600 a month, that's too much, maybe $200. However, I'm going to be home for about 3 weeks or somewhere for 3 weeks. We'll pick it up later. These are the people that are saying that they want to make sure that corporations are taken care of. They want to make sure that they're taking care of the NRA, all of these different kind of organizations, but starving Americans. And so I think that when people see this particular regime and all of the people that come out of this regime, it is real, to me, it makes it much, much easier to cast a vote for people who actually do believe in some level of the rule of law.
But I do want to remind y'all that Donald Trump said, I never believed in this project. I did not support this project. But your grifting ass son did. Your namesake.
His campaign rally?
I am obliged to play this video.
And thank you guys for being here. Brian, thank you so much for all your sacrifices doing this and showing really what capitalism's all about, right? This is private enterprise at its finest, doing it better, faster, cheaper than anything else. And what you guys are doing is pretty amazing. It started from a grassroots effort, and it's just doing some wonderful things for an important issue. And thank you guys for being here. Brian, thank you so much for all your sacrifices doing this.
So the Brian he was referencing, that's one of the people who got indicted today. So when Donald Trump says, oh, I was never down with this, yeah, but Fredo was.
I don't say that about Fredo. He's not dumb, he's smart. He's smart and he wants respect, brother.
Fredo was. See, y'all,
there is no Michael Corleone in that
I kept
family,
trying to tell y'all, this is the thug in chief. This is the thug in chief. They all are grifters. And you know who the stupidest people out there are? These stupid conservatives who just keep giving these fools money. Remember the other fools who had that Trump PAC and the fools thought they were giving money for Trump re-election and all that they were doing was simply paying themselves? I keep trying to tell, look, you stupid if you give money to Candace Owens. You stupid if you give money to Brandon Tatum. You got to be a dumbass to give money to Jesse Lee Peterson, to Steve Bannon, to all of these. That's the game they play. The game they play. And these folks just sit here and say, y'all got to understand how the game works. That's why you got all these conservative radio stations. Because what these folks do is they sit there and they sip every day. They just feeding them that stuff. Obama was weak. Obama's a Muslim. Obama was a terrorist. All this sort of stuff. And they buying into it. So they come back and they just shell out their $5, $10, $20, $25. They raised $25 million for this wall. 25 million. You can go down the line. That's what you have here. And see, now y'all understand. Now y'all understand why Trump wanted Barr in. Hell, Barr, this thing was, let me tell y'all something. If this thing was close, Barr would have told him shut it down.
Right.
Even Barr probably like, damn, I can't even. Hey dog.
No question.
I can't even fix this one. He was like, I mean, damn, man, you know, Barr was like, look, dog, damn, I mean, I done fixed the Roger Stone thing. All right, I fixed the Michael Flynn thing. But they got so much stuff on these fools, I can't even fix. Oh, but guess who also, y'all, was on the advisory committee? Eric Prince.
Oh,
Betsy DeVos's brother. I ain't done. Former baseball player, that racist Kurt Schilling. And guess who else? Fake-ass cowboy David Clark.
Oh, yeah.
So they're not
all of them
he
were
needs
on.
a check.
Yeah, the U.S. Attorney's Office ain't done.
And the post office police. I guess something does work at the post office, huh?
Okay.
All I'm saying, I'm just saying. So while all y'all sitting here acting a fool, you know, doing what y'all do, I just keep trying to explain to y'all. You know, okay, keep it up. Y'all, these are thugs. They are grifters. That's all they know. That's all they do. And you just need to understand how they roll. I'm just trying to tell y'all. So look, and that's why they're trying to hold on, because Trump, y'all, hold up, I forgot. I got to tell y'all the last one. The damn court in New York said, Trump, no. You got to turn your tax returns over to the DA in Manhattan. Now they're trying to fight that. Y'all.
But Roland, you know that problem with judges.
Right,
that's right.
Right. But the deal though is
because John Roberts set it up, so they're gonna have to appeal it back to him. That's why he won. He didn't win. They knew they was gonna do. That's right.
Hey, all I'm saying is this here. When you have thug after thug after thug, y'all. I told y'all it's 74 days left in this. I got my notice today, my absentee ballot, filled it out today, mail that sucker back. Y'all, if we do what we are supposed to do, I know there's a new poll saying they tied in Minnesota, but y'all, if we do what we are supposed to do, the day after election, I'm gonna be sitting here jamming to this. Crank it up. Us and John P. King singing, I Made It Out. Now look, Obama said it last night in his speech. No, pull the music. I didn't tell you pull the music down. Going back to the panel. The only way this gonna happen is if y'all get registered, is if y'all vote, is if you check your registration. You got to tell every family member, every one of your cousins, everyone, you got your nephew, your niece, your aunt, your uncle, all of them, because these thugs have got to go, because we got to be out of this mess. Sing it, John. If y'all stay at home, that ain't gonna happen. Go ahead and close us out, Greg Carr.
No, brother. My soul look back and wonder how I got over might be the one I'll see if we get past January.
Reese, close us out.
I make it out a little bit farther than the U.S., but I will be in and say, if you don't vote, none of it matters.
Right.
Are going to be in whatever the earthly version of hell is.
Hold on, Reese. Greg finish.
All right, go ahead.
Reese, go ahead.
I'm saying we naming it and we claiming it Biden-Harris victory 2020, but we got to vote Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, and Plan D.
Go ahead. Erica, close it out.
Come on, Eric.
And get your voting outfit together. Yes, I said outfit. I'm bringing the whole South. Get your voting outfit together. Your PPE, your shoes, your shoe covers, your face shield, your mask, your little water, your hairnet, your gloves, your extra gloves, your hand sanitizer, your chaps if you have to wear them. Get your voting outfit together now.
Look, I'm real clear. I am hyper-focused. This thug and his birth-a-damn wife and his ignorant children, all them grifters have got to go.
Come on, Roland.
And anybody who want to sit here and play games, any of y'all want to say, hey, this ain't no big deal, we really have dealt with more. These folk don't believe in civil rights. They don't believe in police consent decrees. They don't believe in real criminal justice reform. They don't believe in actually helping black businesses. They don't believe in the Affordable Care Act and helping folks with health care. And even Republican states like Oklahoma and Missouri passed Medicaid expansion. All I'm saying is if y'all sitting here stuck on stupid, keep making up some bullshit in terms of what's going on, I'm trying to tell y'all right now, if they are in charge of the White House, in charge of the Senate, there's nothing that you say you care about that they are going to do. They ain't moved on fixing the Voting Rights Act. They have not moved on making sure our elections are secure. Mitch McConnell says, look, he's the grave digger. You name it, that's what he is. And so, this is not about Democrat, Republican. This ain't about even Trump, Biden. This is literally a decision that you're going to be voting on for your children's children. Don't play games with this. I'm telling y'all right now, these folks got to go. And I told y'all this means war. They asses got to go. And so if any more of these thugs get arrested, hell yeah, we gonna do the happy dance. And I can't wait for Trump to lose so they can go back and indict Roger Stone and throw his punk ass in prison with that particular racist.
Back to our Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment.
As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted. which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. The Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law is suing Postmaster General Louis DeJoy and the United States Postal Service for the actions intended to disrupt the 2020 election. They are suing on behalf of the National Urban League, Common Cause, and the League of Women Voters to challenge the actions intended, again, as I said, to disrupt the 2020 election. Joining us right now is Kristen Clark. She's the President and Executive Director for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. So, Kristen, what is the basis of your lawsuit?
Well, there is a pandemic that has gripped the nation. There are Americans all across the country that are casting their votes by mail in historic numbers because they have no other choice. And what does this administration do? They put in place a new Postmaster General just 2 months ago, Louis DeJoy. He has no experience inside the Postal Service, but he's a Trump mega donor. And in 2 months, he's wreaked havoc and chaos. He has eliminated overtime for postal workers. He's ripped up blue mailboxes from communities. He has eliminated scanning machines used to sort mail in mass. He's put in place a hiring freeze. I mean, you name it, he has done it. And he has done this with the goal of carrying out President Trump's agenda, his goal of silencing and discouraging people of voting by mail this season. So with about 75 days to go until the November election, we're not going to stand by idly and wait to see what happens. On Tuesday, we filed a federal lawsuit in Maryland. Our clients include the National Urban League, League of Women Voters, Common Cause, organizations that work every day to register people to vote. And we're arguing that Louis DeJoy's actions violate the Constitution. He is literally taking action intended to suppress people's voting rights. And he's also undertaken all of these policies without going to the U.S. Postal Commission and getting clearance for the changes as required under administrative law. So we're going to fight tooth and nail. This is one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime. And we know that this administration is bent on undertaking any action possible to disenfranchise voters.
And so you're suing them. What do you want to achieve? What remedy do you want the court to put into place? Because he's already said, the Speaker Nancy Pelosi, that he has halted the changes until after the election.
Yeah, that falls flat with us. It rings hollow. We're not buying his mea culpa. He needs to be held accountable. He has proven every day during his 2 months on the job that he is there to hijack and turn the U.S. Postal Service upside down, an agency that's been in place for over 200 years. And you never hear controversy about the Postal Service because it's run by postal workers who do their job. They get mail to people and they get it to them on time. So we're not buying his apology. We're not going to stand by and wait to see what happens. We're in court right now making sure that we can get remedial relief to address the damage that he has done. He has done tremendous damage during his 2 months on the job. We run a program called Election Protection. It's anchored by the 866 Our Vote hotline. And Roland, over the last few weeks, we have heard from thousands of voters who've said, you know what? I requested my absentee ballot weeks ago, and it hasn't gotten here. It's election day. What should I do? And we're getting ready for the general election, where we know that there are going to be historic numbers of people who are turning out. So we're not going to stand by. We need to get the U.S. Postal Service back on track, back to the status quo, and it's going to take work for him to correct the damage that he has done.
All right, then. Kristen Clark, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Greg Carr, these lawsuits are important. This is also why I often, when Kristen is on, look, I tell people why we have to support the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. You have other legal civil rights organizations. You have NAACP, LDF. You got Barbara Arnwine's organization. These are the folks who are using the court system the same way Thurgood Marshall did and so many others. That matters. So action in the streets, action in the suites in politics and corporate America, but you got to have the lawyers too.
It all works together, Roland. We know that, and I read the brief that they submitted. I think in the prayer for relief, I think it was item 7, they asked for everything that they've done so far to be reversed. Talk about Rashida Tlaib. I saw Congresswoman Tlaib standing in front of the post office in one of the post offices in Detroit the other day, saying it's not enough for them to say they're going to stop everything. You've got to reverse it now. All these mailboxes that you've taken up, all these mail sorters that you've taken up and begun to destroy. And so you're absolutely right. This has to be a full spectrum approach. It's interesting thinking about Linda Sarsour and then seeing our sister Kristen Clark. You know, it might look like those are two different kind of sets of politics, but it's all part of the same thrust and strategy. And the last thing I'll say is interesting. Julius Hobson, who actually was vice president nominee for the People's Party in 1974, went to Tuskegee. He was the first black person from HBCU to be nominated for vice president. Benjamin Spock. Remember Spock ran for president, Dr. Spock. But, you know, Hobson is known in Washington, D.C. for being one of the main figures who said it's not enough just to vote. You got to get in the streets and back those people in electoral politics with street action. And then you got to have lawyers in place for when they try to arrest you. So all of this works together. They are going to steal this election unless everybody plays their position. The lawyers like Kristen, the folks in the street, electoral it all works together. Because believe me, that's what their team is doing. They're all working together.
Reese, it is going to be a battle. And I keep telling people, and you heard Michelle Obama modify her when they go high, when they go low, we go high. Let's just be honest. She modified that thing a couple nights ago because of how Trump and his folks have operated in the last 3 years.
Yeah, and I'm still going lower than what Michelle said. I said, when they go low, I'm going to punch them in the face. But I do respect that First Lady Michelle Obama can't go as far as I would go. But this is an all-hands-on-deck situation. I definitely applaud the work that Kristen Clark is doing in her organization. You have different states' attorney generals that are stepping up to the plate. Congress is starting to put a little bit more pressure, and specifically the Democrats in Congress, let's be clear, is starting to put a little bit more pressure on it. But the one good thing about this obstruction and this voter suppression is that we all know it's happening. They've given us enough time to make a voting plan A, as you know, Erica has been really beating that drum about making a voting plan, but they've given us enough time to know that we have to have a voting plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D. And so that is the power of knowing indisputably what we're up against. You know, I don't know if it's enough time to reverse the damage that they've done to the U.S. Postal Service. I think that they're going to have to, just to some degree, undo some of that damage, because it's not just impacting absentee ballots, it's impacting our actual economic flow and people's livelihoods in terms of being able to get their medication. So I do think that we have a battle on hands, but you know, it's going to take all of us getting involved and making sure ultimately that they do not succeed in suppressing the vote in the way that they want to.
Erica.
Yeah, this is a buffet for everybody, this operation of voter suppression. And while Kristen, you were talking with Kristen, I was on Twitter and actually had retweeted something that she had tweeted out moments before she came on to talk with you, Roland, and that was specifically around now our postal and service and postal employees are getting a memo saying, listen, if you don't talk to the press, and then be very suspicious of folks who are customers that are asking a series of questions. So it is that same type of paranoia. It is that projection, that whole really regime presence that is really trickled down, and they're funneling it down into all of these different levels of service. And so I think that people are really seeing, particularly folks that are in rural community, our Native brothers and sisters that are on reservations, but particularly people that have not been subject to voter suppression before, that this is an equal opportunity for all, and people are seeing how it's interrupting their days. We saw, photographs of, a mailroom in which there was still mail that had not yet been delivered since August the 7th. And here we are going into the third week of August. And so I love what everyone said around playing their role, but it's really about definitely keeping on the pressure, because as we all are really feeling this, there's so many different layers to invalidating this election that this son of a Klansman will not try. But it is really the will of the people that are really going to make sure that people not only vote, but that they bring folks with them, but then that they also are able to fight back this voter suppression by showing up early and showing up with other people too.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. Folks, Joe Biden's campaign has disavowed Palestinian American activist Linda Sarsour after she spoke at the Democratic National Committee Muslims and Allies virtual assembly. She appeared at the online meeting of Muslims who will be campaigning for Biden for president. Biden's campaign spokesman Andrew Bates said this in a statement to CNN, that Biden and the Democratic platform condemns Sarsour's views and opposes the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. Sarsour has been involved in a number of controversies over her activism related to Israel. Also, of course, she's one of the co-organizers of the Women's March. She joins us right now. Linda, glad to have you back on Roland Martin Unfiltered. So this is, you were a surrogate for Senator Bernie Sanders. You were out there, you were advocating for him. This particular event, were you invited to participate in this event? And did that come from activists? It come from the party?
Thank you so much, Roland, for having me here today. What's really interesting about this particular controversy that I'm in, Roland, and you followed many of my controversies, is that it was unprovoked. Nothing actually happened. Was I a former surrogate for the Bernie Sanders campaign? I am an official delegate to the DNC. I am a delegate from the great state of New York. There was a Muslim delegate assembly, which means that all Muslim delegates are invited to it. I was asked by Muslim leaders and delegates at this event to speak. And one of the reasons why I was invited to speak is because to give legitimacy and credibility to the position that I hold, which many Muslim Americans and Arab Americans hold. There is not much enthusiasm in our community around Joe Biden. But as you know, I have been putting forth this framework that Joe Biden is the best opponent for us to have in the White House, and that we cannot defeat fascism. We have to defeat fascism, which is why I'm going to put my vote on Joe Biden.
So this thing came out like you just jumped up on the stage. So you're saying you have credentials.
Oh, I am a credentialed DNC delegate. I was formally invited to speak on this Muslim assembly. I didn't protest. And in fact, Roland, the actual entire assembly situation is actually a video on the DNC website, and you can watch it. And in fact, you would laugh because you know me very well. I was actually quite bland and out of character. I didn't even mention Israel. I didn't say BDS. I didn't say anything. I didn't talk about Palestine. All I said was the Muslim Americans are swing voters. We are not a monolithic community. We are people who care about more than just national security and Palestine and Israel and foreign policy. We are actually a community that cares about healthcare and education and infrastructure and jobs and the economy. And that is really it. I was so out of character. It's like I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. I'm minding my own business, Roland, as you know. I moved with our dear sister, Tamika Mallory, to Louisville, Kentucky. I wake up in the morning yesterday to find this controversy. And here I am, not ignoring national politics, really putting my mind on something that I believe deeply in, which is to get justice for Breonna Taylor. And here goes the Joe Biden campaign throwing the most prominent Muslim American organizer under the bus. Not only am I the most prominent Muslim organizer in America, I'm also the leader and the co-founder of the My Muslim Vote campaign that is stationed in 6 states right now that Joe Biden needs to win in November. And I don't even know what to say. A white spokesperson, Roland Martin, was coward to the right-wing media, coward to the Republicans, literally. The original drama came from Borgen, who you know is a senior advisor to the Trump campaign. He's the one that was like, oh my God, Linda's speaking at the DNC. And immediately the Biden campaign cowered to the right wing and went to answer. And when they disavow my views, which is what they said they condemned my views, not from what I said at the DNC, just in general. That means they condemn the views of 99.9% of the communities that I come from who hold the exact views that I have.
So it has to be perplexing or difficult for you to sit here and go, okay, I'm a delegate, which means you actually got to vote on the nominee. You are active in trying to get the nominee elected. And his campaign is like, hell no, we want nothing to do with you at all. And
my views, they want nothing to do with my views, which means those views are not welcomed in the Democratic Party, which by default means that my whole community is not welcomed in the Democratic Party because the views that I hold, Roland, are mainstream in the communities that I come from.
When your critics call you anti-Semitic, when they say you're racist, when they say you're a bigot, when they say you hate Israel, how do you respond?
My track record, Roland, is very clear. I have been working with Jewish American communities for the last 2 decades. They all have come out. Many of them have come out in solidarity each time that I've been attacked for being anti-Semitic. The bottom line is what I am is a Palestinian American. What I am is someone who challenges the narrative around the state of Israel. I am someone, Roland, who is going to be unapologetic about who I am, just as Roland is unapologetically Black. I do not have to change who I am, change my views to appease anyone. And I don't actually require anybody else to do the same. So when I'm being called anti-Semitic, it's actually quite antithetical to everything that I am. And you know me very well. I'm a person where there is an injustice. That is where I am. I have raised money for desecrated Jewish cemeteries. I have stood in solidarity with Jewish communities. I have organized, in solidarity with Black people, with undocumented people, with LGBTQIA people. Wherever there is a fight, Roland, that is where I am. So you cannot claim something that does not match my character, does not match my work, my track record, literally my everyday. And everyone who knows me, Roland, knows exactly who I am and what I stand for. And I'm not going to cower. And the bottom line is, and you know this, I have never been an ambassador to the Democratic Party. I was never an ambassador for the Joe Biden campaign. I never worked for the Joe Biden campaign, nor do I want to work for it, nor do I want to ever have a job in the administration. I am trying to help defeat fascism. And if the Biden campaign doesn't understand why my voice is important, not only do I bring Arab American and Muslim voters to the table from states like Michigan, which we have to win in order to win this general election, I also bring progressives to the table. I bring Bernie supporters to the table. I am very well respected in the progressive movement. So if you want to throw under the bus one of the most prominent women organizers in the country, you do that, and you're going to have to lay in the bed that you made. The last thing that I'll say about this, in this segment, Roland, is that while I was watching the women's tribute, I don't know if you watched it yesterday.
I did.
Listen, forget Linda, put me to the side, right? Make believe that nothing ever happened to me and I'm great. Did you notice, Roland, that they were showing footage of all these women who won office, their victory speeches, these really emotional moments? Did you notice that two of the most prominent politicians in America, which are Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and Congressman Ilhan Omar, were nowhere to be found? So you wanted to show us everyone else that made history, but you left out the two Muslim women, you left out the Palestinian women. Then you want to disavow me, and then you show footage of the Women's March on Washington, and you in fact show my photo, like I'm in the video. So how does that make sense, Roland? How do you use my labor to act as if the Women's March somehow was connected to the Democratic Party, which it was not? Never been funded by the Democratic Party or sponsored by the Democratic Party. And then you literally delete and erase two of the most prominent politicians who come from these communities, also representing Midwestern states. Rashida's from Michigan, Ilhan's from Minnesota, and you need to win both those states in order to go to the White House. And on top of that, there is not one single Muslim American on top in the entire main stage. You will not see a Muslim American in the main stage of the DNC. Why is that, Roland? Why are we a community directly targeted by Trump? The bigotry that we've experienced as Muslim Americans in the last 20 years, especially during the last 2016 campaign into now. And for some reason, this particular brand of the party and the Biden campaign have erased us like we don't exist. Okay, then I don't know how you're going to ask me for my vote if I don't exist, if my community doesn't exist.
But before I go to my panel with their questions, I do have to ask you this, and that is, and a lot of people did not realize this, but in 2000, George W. Bush was very aggressive in courting Muslim voters. Grover Norquist played a huge role in organizing that. Bush raised money from Muslims. He got a significant number of their votes. You made the point that Muslim voters are swing voters. Fact of the matter is, the fastest growing segment among Muslims in America are African Americans.
Absolutely.
So with this whole deal here, do you believe that the Biden campaign is potentially turning off Muslim voters and now saying, okay, are we not going to examine every single one of you and what you support and who you backed before?
Oh, it's not maybe. It already happened. I mean, every major Arab American and Muslim American organization has sent out letters publicly and privately to the Biden campaign at this moment. There are conversations happening in the campaign. When you say to someone, if I say to you, Roland, that I condemn all of your views and you carry views that 99% of the people in your community hold, that means we're all not welcomed. And so my community right now is absolutely enraged. They are outraged right now. And what they're asking for from the Biden campaign is a retraction. They're asking for an apology, and they have to commit to a big tent party where we have the understanding that unity is not uniformity, and that the reason what makes us different than the Republican Party is we are not monolithic, and there is no way that we can have a party where we are all going to agree. And if my views and the views of my community are not welcomed in the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party is not going to be a successful party. Muslim Americans are swing voters in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Virginia, in Florida, and in Texas, and in Minnesota. Ilhan Omar represents the city of Minneapolis. And right now we just saw a poll that came out where Donald Trump and Biden are literally tied in a place like Minnesota, and Biden is only ahead of Trump by 3% in the state of Michigan. We cannot repeat 2016 over. So my community right now is outraged. I'm going to still tell my community, look, we got to defeat fascism, but I cannot convince people and do the work and the dirty work of the Biden campaign. They have to step up. They have to say they made a mistake, and they have to apologize. And then hopefully my community will come around after that.
Question first off, Erica.
Yes, great speaking with you, Linda. This is Erica. And my question for you is, prior to this happening, What was the temperature of Muslim Americans and folks that you reached out to prior to this and then post?
I appreciate that, Erica. To be quite honest with you, lots of people in the Muslim American and Arab American communities have specific things that they care about, in addition to issues that other people care about, like healthcare, et cetera. Majority of Muslim Americans support Medicare for all. Biden does not support Medicare for all. A majority of Muslim Americans want to abolish agencies like ICE, which were created after 9/11, really to target Muslims and those that were perceived to be terrorist threats, and they want to abolish ICE. Biden does not support that. We also have seen surveys coming out of the Institute for Social Policy Understanding on issues of police reform and defunding police, et cetera, which a lot of Muslim Americans support. And also when it comes to foreign policy, the Muslim American community is a very pro-Palestinian community. They support human rights of the Palestinian people. And it's not something that, unfortunately, Biden has a track record in. So the temperature check was, okay, Linda, we don't like Biden. We don't think he represents our values. We don't think life is going to be better after, better with a Biden administration. It may not get worse, but we don't know if it's going to get better. And my framing that I have been able to bring people along, people have shared my videos. I have been on local, Muslim media, blogging, where I've said to people, but let's make a decision here. What if we say that we want Biden to be our opponent in the White House? And people literally, Erica, were going along with my argument, saying that Biden would be our opponent. We would build a movement under him. We would push him to do what better and do better. And now they're like, if we can't hold the Biden campaign accountable when he's the candidate and we can't even get some respect candidate, how are we going to get respect and hold him accountable when he's the actual president of the United States of America? And to be honest, Erica, I don't actually have an answer to those people in my community at this particular moment.
Reese.
Hi, Linda. I don't really have a question, but my comment is just that it sounds to me like the Biden campaign needs to work on their cultural competency in matters like this and how they approach different communities instead of a knee-jerk reaction. And so I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing and continuing to push through and outreach to your community, despite the fact that there are some ideological differences there.
I appreciate that. And I think just so folks understand, Roland, is that the man who's the director of rapid response is a white man. And I don't use that necessarily in a derogatory way, but to your point about cultural competency is that, trust me when I tell you, if it was a black woman or a person of color that was there, they would not have a knee-jerk reaction that would require them to throw a Muslim American woman in hijab, who's Palestinian, who's part of the larger movements that we need to win this election, under the bus. Someone of color who had the expertise would have been more strategic, more logical. And the real thing that I wanted them to do, just to be clear, I don't need the Biden campaign to agree with our community, to agree on our issues. What I would have said if I was the director of rapid response and asked the question about Linda Sarsour participating in the DNC, my answer would have been, to be clear, Linda is a DNC delegate from the great state of New York. And while we do not agree with Linda and on these issues, the Democratic Party is a big tent, and we welcome people to have spirited debate because that is what makes democracy great. That's all. They could have said they disagreed with me. They could have said they disagreed on the issue of BDS, on the issue of Palestine, Israel, and that would have been totally fine with me. I would have been totally fine because I already know that. I am not naive to think that the Biden campaign actually agrees with me on probably 90% of the things that I believe. The fact that they thought that the knee-jerk reaction was to throw important swing voters under the bus, a marginalized community that has been quite even more marginalized in the last 20 years and more so under the Trump administration. The first executive order, Roland, you remember I was on your show about this. The first executive order put forth by the Trump administration was the Muslim ban.
Right.
That was the first piece of paper that he signed. So the fact that we're going to throw the entire Muslim American community and Arab American Palestinian communities by saying we condemn these views in our party. First of all, it's not true because a majority of Democrats have moved exponentially on the issue of Israel-Palestine. And they have also, many in the Democratic Socialists and a lot in the progressive wing of the party have embraced the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement as a nonviolent movement to resist the human rights violations that the state of Israel commits against Palestinians. So the Democratic Party needs to catch up with us. I'm not trying to catch up with the Democratic Party because they're 20 years behind me. And so the question is, can they do that in a very short period of time so we could win this damn election and defeat this damn fascist in the White House?
Greg Carr.
Thank you, Roland. And thank you, Sister Linda, particularly in this moment for relocating to Louisville, you and Sister Tamika. My young brother, Sean Ali Waddell, who's down there, who's a Howard student. I know he's been down there with y'all. He's telling me he loved it so much. And I saw Nick came down last week with you all, Nick Cannon. So thank you on behalf of all of us who are fighting for freedom. I'm going to try to talk and ask you this question as if there are no cameras. So we know there's a different conversation when cameras, right? But pragmatically, this fear-driven Democratic Party still trying to chase those 3 imaginary Trump voters. Whatever you do, they're going to hang the Muslims, hang the black, hang everybody on them anyway. So, and I love the way you frame this. You know, he's the best opponent to have in the White House. You know, when they don't roll it back, because it looks like they really are trying to replicate 2016. You know, when they don't roll this back, what do we need to do to prevent any more erosion so that we don't end up with this fascist in the White House? I mean, I don't know that you're prepared to be able to have that kind of conversation with us now here, but what's the step when they don't? Because that wasn't an accident, just like leaving Ilhan and Rashida and them out. That's no accident. They're chasing them imaginary white voters who will never vote for them. So what's the strategy if they don't, when they don't roll it back? Don't apologize.
I mean, the bottom line here is they're going to have to reap what they sow, and they also have to lay in the bed that they made. But it's also bigger than the myself and my communities. What I've been telling folks, and it's a strategy that I hope works, it may work, it may not work. I said, listen, you may not be enthusiastic about Joe Biden being your president, but you know this and I know this. There are young black people across this country running for office, running for congressional seats. We have people of color and immigrants and women right now who also need to win those races in November. We have an opportunity, as you know, in a place like South Carolina for Jamie Harrison to take out Lindsey Graham. Like, we really have a lot of great races that we need to be focusing on. So what I'm telling a lot of people in my community, I said, listen, find a local candidate that really inspires you, someone that really aligns with your values and principles. Knock those doors, do the text messages, do whatever it is that you need to do, donate the money. And what I hope happens is that it trickles from the bottom up. If we can get higher voter turnout around some of these candidacies in these important swing states, that may mean that when you go to the polls, we hope that people are voting up and down the ballot. So not only do they vote for the candidate that they love, but they're also saying, well, my candidate is on this party line. Maybe I should just go up and down the ballot, which is what I'm saying to people. That is one strategy that I'm holding. I don't know if it's going to work. I do think that the Biden administration has to apologize to Muslim and Arab American communities, only because, number one, it's the right thing to do, but also because we are swing voters. Like the state of Michigan, Roland knows this very well. It's home to the highest concentration of Muslim American voters in the entire country. We have large populations in California, in New York, and they are more than the one in Michigan, but Michigan is the most highly concentrated. You cannot win an election without Michigan. You don't need New York. You don't need California. You cannot win a race without Minnesota. You can't win a race without Virginia and Pennsylvania and North Carolina and Florida. And this is where our community is concentrated. We are a very diverse community. People in my community don't look just like me. We are South Asian. We are Arab American, Southeast Asian. We're African American. We are African immigrants. We are literally represent the globe. And the campaign just snubbed us. And so the question is, are we a community that is only about acceptance, or are we also about respect? We have self-respect. And our community right now is waiting, and they have been demanding. They wrote public letters. The campaign knows how outraged our community leaders are right now. And these are the people that are supposed to move the people. And as a leader of the My Muslim Vote campaign, it's going to be I was already an uphill battle, and the mountain was already high for me to climb. And now the mountain just got really slippery. Somebody just dumped a bucket of soap on the mountain, and I have to figure out how to get to the top. And that is what the this campaign has done. Just made our work just much harder than it already is.
Linda Sarsour, we certainly appreciate you joining us to give your perspective on this issue. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment.
As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. So, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she spoke last night for 60 seconds, and people acted a fool because she said this.
In a time when millions of people in the United States are looking for deep, systemic solutions to our crises of mass evictions, unemployment, and lack of health care, en el espíritu del pueblo and out of a love for all people, I hereby second the nomination of Senator Bernard Sanders of Vermont for President of the United States of America.
That's it, y'all. That's what she said. And the folks at NBC News put out this tweet. Oh my God, she did not talk about Joe Biden. Hours later, NBC News released this. Editor's note and clarification. Ocasio-Cortez was asked by the DNC to second Sanders' nomination. The nomination is a procedural requirement of the convention. Ocasio-Cortez has previously endorsed Biden, and her speech was similar in length to other nominating speeches. Y'all, they put that out 3.5 hours afterwards. Lauren, this shows stupidity. This is the stupidity, Lauren, of people. Like, this was a thing. People were like losing their mind. And this is also what happens. And again, I don't know who the hell was running the social media at NBC, but clearly was somebody who doesn't know what the hell happens at conventions without realizing that people who get delegates, deals are cut where they still get, for the record, to get their delegates, and they tabulate them. And typically what happens is after the first ballot, there typically is somebody to say, I call to make it unanimous. Then the delegates vote. They make it unanimous who the nominee is. This shows the stupidity of people who are always trying to find something. Oh, my God, Ocasio-Cortez, she didn't talk about Joe Biden.
Yeah, well, I mean, we do live in a world where our technology, our social media technology rewards people who come up with a bombastic get, so obviously I know there was a discussion at Twitter about removing the like button, and that may have been in part because that has motivated people to post things that are not true before verification, post false information, post information that they have no expertise in, all for the attention of the retweet and the like button. I mean, so I think a lot of what drives these little silly moments of, wanting to sort of run to social media and post something and the excitement of it, and it's inaccurate, and then you get embarrassed later on. And we've seen many very interesting examples side by sides where, somebody has sent something out 2 years ago and then they contradicted. I remember the Sean King example recently where he had just, basically wrote the opposite of something. And that's what social media, I think, drives a lot of people to do. Unfortunately, it impacts what is, generally considered to be, legacy journalism, which is supposed to be built on fact checking and being careful about what you put out there. But, unfortunately, legacy journalist organizations are trying to keep up with everybody on Twitter who's just putting stuff out there. So it's just it's a race to the bottom, and the casualty is accuracy. Anytime you have speed and you have complicated information, the casualty will always be accuracy.
But it's just basic. It's just so basic, Robert. And these people, again, they act a fool. They get all upset and like, oh my God, how dare you? And and what she does is she said, y'all, this is what it was. And again, people, it's like they're so quick to try to find the gotcha moment. This is where credible people have to go, can y'all calm down? This is what's going on. I had to do that about 3 or 4 times last night where people were like, oh my God, I don't understand what's going on. Like, this makes no sense. And I'm probably, because y'all probably don't even pay attention to this stuff all the time. So chill.
Well, this is why Donald Trump won in 2016, because he was able to control the news cycle, understanding that nobody pays as much attention to the fact check as they do to the initial impression. What they were trying to do, look, the convention was pretty boring. They were up against LeBron in the first round of the playoffs. So I think they were trying to spice it up by creating a reality show drama situation in an otherwise mundane convention. Who's the young, sexy rising star that we can get some media attention from and get some clickbait to? What the song came out a few years ago, 100 likes, they'll do anything you like for 100 likes. They are trying to get that sort of attention for an otherwise mundane task that's not getting great ratings. And so they try to create a story. It's reality TV media. It's no different than Housewives or Love and Hip Hop or anything along those lines. If there's not a storyline there, you create the storyline through the media. Trump has been the master of manipulating this. He's been the master of getting free media. I think the last media cycle or last campaign, he got around $3 billion in free media because he knew that just by putting out a tweet, he could get more attention and more eyeballs on him than by doing $1 million ad buy. And the media is falling directly into it again. And I think the media has to, at some point, be held responsible for the fact that they keep giving free ad time and free advertising to the shiny candidate instead of doing some real media and real journalism to get to the truth.
It's just basic, Brandon. It's just basic. It's like if you know the deal, it's basic.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when you got to watch a baseball game with someone who doesn't watch baseball, and you got to explain all the different rules. But look, I think at the end of the day, too, people being sheltered in place, folks are paying more attention now than they have in the past. But I think to your point, when the media gets it wrong, it certainly continues to give fuel to a tyrant in the office of the presidency. And as more fuel is given to him, it certainly shines more attention on his space and away from what's most important. I would say this, though. I really wish that Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez would have gotten a little bit more time to speak last night, because I actually believe that she represents the future of our party.
Dude, and you know what? She's not worried about last night. She ain't worried about last night. She ain't worried about last night. Here's the deal. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez could actually go on her Instagram page, her Facebook page, and Twitter page, and have more people watching than who watched last night.
No, look, I don't disagree with that. What I'm saying, though, is it's not just embracing her style. It's about a recognition that right now you have party leaders that are more interested in recruiting disgruntled Republicans, where I think we have an opportunity to grow our space, particularly within our black base within the party, within our youth base, the progressive space in the party, and that she represents a voice and an ideology that reflects the values of today. Look, the people not understanding, certain parliamentary or convention rules, yeah, that's frustrating. And it's also more frustrating when the media gets it wrong. But what I would say, just to offer some perspective, that where the party needs to continue to go and grow, that wave has swept through this country.
Actually,
it's just one example of that.
No, but it's not. It's not. And this is where I'm going to push back on you on that one. Here's the deal, that Democrats have to understand and accept. Every district in the nation is not the same as her district. The reality is this: the Democrats took control of the House in 2018, not because of these super progressive districts. They actually took control because of moderate districts. For instance, Congresswoman Lucy McBath barely won her district. She beat Karen Handel. Right now, they're running neck and neck. That district is not a super progressive district. The district in Georgia, same, Sanford Bishop, same thing, not super progressive. So a Sanford Bishop has to take different positions because of his district than Congressman John Lewis did, or even David Scott or Hank Johnson in theirs. And so we have to, I think we make a mistake that, first of all, congressional districts are 700,000 people, okay? So the reality is Ocasio-Cortez represents, there's a constituency that is far left progressive, no doubt. But Democrats cannot have a majority if they only appeal to the Ocasio-Cortezes of the world. They have to have far left and moderate or centrist Democrats, because you have to win based upon the contours of your congressional district or your state.
Yeah, but Roland,
Casey in Pennsylvania has to run a totally different race than Harris or Feinstein in California. It's just, they're different.
But Roland, you don't have to be progressive or be labeled as a progressive to advocate for Medicare for all.
No, I understand that. I understand that. But what
I think that's what I'm saying, though. I'm not saying that left versus right. I'm saying that the message of Medicare for all, fully funding our public schools, creating opportunities so people can actually make a livable wage, making sure that people like Jeff Bezos, who are paying the same tax rate as individuals seeking unemployment. That's what I'm saying.
But here's the deal, though. You can't. But you actually can't have everyone saying Medicare for all when the very unions that support Democrats were the ones who were saying to Warren and Harris and Sanders, "Yo, back the hell up, because we fought hard for those benefits." See, this is the struggle, Robert, that I think that again, as I look at the Democratic Party, the reality is this. The Democratic Party has a much larger tent than the Republican Party. Democrats got to keep a whole bunch of people happy to win. Republicans, you're either right or far right, that you so right you come back left. I mean, that's the deal. And so the Republicans have it much easier in the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party has an Ocasio-Cortez and a Joe Manchin and a Casey and a Bishop and a McBath in the same district. The right, Jordan, Rubio, Cornyn, I mean, you pretty much know what they said. That's the difference here. And I think a lot of people don't understand those distinctions of why you got to have this mix of people who are speaking on the Democratic side.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment.
As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted. which means a potential loss of funding of services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov.